This morning, as soon as the press briefing is over, we have a general shareholders meeting with TALEM. Two of the agenda points, besides the regular agendas of establishing minutes, etc., and approval of minutes, is the appointment of a CEO. The position has been vacant in TALEM now for quite some years. TALEM has done their recruitment round. I think they have interviewed, they have had 4 or 5, I think it was 5 or 6 candidates. They had 5 candidates, I think, and they narrowed it down to 4 and then eventually 2. And 2 names have been submitted to the board, to the shareholder. And today, the shareholder will be taking a decision on that. The process that will continue thereafter is that the name will be submitted for vetting by ADVADSM and at the same time by the Corporate Governance Council before the appointment takes effect. The other issue that they want to talk about, they will be making a presentation on partnering for TALEM. This is an issue that has been ongoing for many years. We can recall the discussions about downsizing, right-sizing, and upsizing of TALEM, and now they feel they are at a stage where they have done sufficient groundwork, and they want to make a presentation to the shareholder for a decision by the shareholder. There will be no decision by the shareholder today in terms of, yes, go left, go right, or stay center, or choose this one or choose that one. The new shareholder, if you want to put it that way, the Council of Ministers, would first need to be brought up to speed about the developments that have taken place. And it's not only that, it's a process that has started several years ago. And the question would be, is this the direction the shareholder would still want to go into, yes or no? There are different opinions floating around about where that can or should go or not. So this agenda point would be mostly informative on the part of the Council of Ministers in terms of getting a presentation and bringing them up to speed. The garbage dump and all issues surrounding it has been center stage now for several weeks, and as you can see, the fires have diminished, and I, as the people say, knock on wood, I think now for the past 2 weeks we didn't have any. But if one would honestly and realistically research the frequency of fires going back as far as, let's say, or as close by as 2010. If we would take the amount of fires that we have had in 2010, 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15, and now 16, I can almost safely say in 2016 we may have had less fires. What you have, we have an election year, and everybody is going to jump on everything and try to get mileage out of it. Does that mean that government is doing absolutely nothing about it? Farthest from the truth. When we recently met in New York and then in West Palm Beach, when we visited, the minister and myself, accompanied by one of the advisors in one of the other ministries, Mr. Dijkhoff, we visited several plants and we looked at options and possibilities, not only for the realization of a waste-to-energy plant, but as the minister had pointed out earlier, even if we sign a contract today, it would take 3 years before that waste-to-energy plant become a reality. So what we are looking at is the separation of our waste to reduce the amount of waste that need to be buried, baling it, compacting it. We have one of the former garbage contractors who has started on his own to stimulate recycling and separation of waste. And the discussion that we have had in the Council of Ministers is that we should tap into the energy that is existing out there. Challenge, if you want to call, our society. Let's all put our money where our mouth is. If we truly want to do something about it, it is something that we all have to do. It is something that we all have to contribute to. And contribute not necessarily in the sense of dollars and cents. Yes, it might cost you an extra garbage bag or not, but like a discussion I had with the Minister of Education, Sylveria Jacobs, who said, I have already started doing my little thing at home. And then she says, you know what? My regular trash can takes now more than a week to get filled. While, for instance, home by me, it's just my wife and I, but I would leave in the morning with an empty trash can, and I come back in the afternoon and the evening, or rather mostly in the night, and it is practically full. Why? Because of the many water bottles, empty bottles of water. And here in the office, we see the same thing. Every time the Council of Ministers convene, they consume together 10, 12, 15, 16 bottles of water. Where do they go? In the trash can. Where does it go? On the garbage dump. If we begin, all of us, separating what ends up there, separating it, and tapping into those who have already started to recycle and export these items off the island, we will greatly reduce the amount of fill that has to go there, and we will also greatly reduce the possibility of fires. So we have had this discussion, and I've told the minister, particularly of Romi, to get on board with the energy that's out there. So turn the criticism into a benefit, because if people are talking about it, then means people are concerned about it, and then people, if you're concerned about something, you got to be willing to do something about it. So now, more than ever, I think the time is ripe. And I coincidentally last night, I was browsing at a paper and I saw a letter to the editor from Fernando Clark, in which he, in his own humorous way of putting things, said that the complaints are now more than ever. Why? Because there's a government that listens. He said the government that was there before wouldn't listen anyway, so people would not complain to them. But since he knows that this government would listen and act on the complaints of the people, that is why people are complaining now. Let's say some people are complaining more than ever. And yes, the government is looking into the fires, minimizing them, but also ensuring that the amount of waste that goes there is brought down to a minimum.
My first question, as you started off, you gave us a lot on the government administration building. I'm hearing and I'm getting some information that TALEM already laid fiber optic cable in that building, and now there is a possibility, I don't know if it's a rumor or if it's just a speculation, that that cable might be removed and replaced by UTS. Do you have any kind of information on that?
Absolutely, absolutely not. I am not aware of such a scenario and would not see what sense that would make. In terms of who is government's in general provider, the provider for telecom for government, phones and data use has been TALEM all a while. So if TALEM has fiber optic in there, I would not see why such a decision would be taken. I smile also because I know people like, if you want to call it speculations, confusions, and the director of SZV, the new owners of the building, is also the director of UTS. So one would feel, well, hey, that's a direction they would want to go into. It's not to my knowledge, we have never had such a discussion, and no instruction as such has come on the part of government. In terms of the cabling, how you call it now?
Fiber optic.
The fiber to homes and to the districts. It is unfortunate that the providers on the island and government was not proactive enough in the past to basically, just like we have done, let's say like we do with our roads, government own the roads and everybody use them, and as such, everybody pay a tax if you are using our roads. We think it would have been a great idea for government to own the fiber network and the cabling and let any and all providers have equal access to it. But now what you're having on Monday or in January, one provider digs up roads in South Reward and they close them, and 2 weeks after another provider comes, digs them up again to lay fiber as well, both of them competing for the same clients. We believe that if government had owned all the infrastructure and whoever wants to lease, it's like the airport. Every airline doesn't have an airport or a landing strip in St. Martin. It is owned by the airport, and whichever airline wants to make use of it, some use it between 12 and 2, and when that plane pulls out, another one comes in 2:30 to 4, et cetera, et cetera. So if government owns it, anybody can use it, rather than having 2, 3 providers digging up the road, laying cabling, and then everybody, from a business point of view, every business is going to provide cabling in the area where they think there will be better business. So you would have remote areas, like I do not see, let's say up in the hills, up in South Reward, or maybe up in St. Peter's, or some areas in Dutch Quarter, Middle Region, that all the providers will be digging up the road to get to those poor people, while they have a right as well. We see it in transportation because it is not properly regulated with the routing. There are certain routes that if you live in Point Blanche, rich or poor, you can't catch a bus. If you live in South Reward up in the hill, you won't catch a bus that takes you there. And it's the same way we feel the superhighway, as they call it, should be accessible to everybody and not be dependent on who selects to go where.
My next question, you gave a lot of information about the Facebook post that threatens your life by Rennie Wilson. And you spoke about the detectives that visited you and asking you to file a complaint. What is the detective going to do? Did they tell you that they are not going to investigate because you did not file a written complaint?
Apparently, the law makes a distinction on certain when the law enforcement can start an investigation on their own. Because I used the analogy and I said when there were postings of an MP in the case of the Bada Bing, I can't remember that there was a complaint filed by somebody saying, hey, I have seen something, a video was posted, and immediately it triggered a reaction. And in this case, you're telling me that I would need to file a complaint. So I told him I do not, and I don't want to now make this a back and forth, but I think it is probably something that we would need Parliament to look into. Because if you're telling me that the Prime Minister of a country can be publicly threatened, and if the Prime Minister does not file a complaint, that nothing will happen or no investigation will be started, because I don't have a Facebook page of my own. The Prime Minister has a Facebook page that is managed by the office. I don't have a Facebook account, no personal account. I don't go on Facebook. So here it is, if I am, for instance, on a business trip, if I'm off island, and somebody say, when the Prime Minister returns to the island, I am going to kill him, and the Prime Minister doesn't know that the information is posted, so the national security would not be triggered to protect the integrity of the country's prime minister. So I'm saying there is a disconnect there, and I believe that when we established our country in 2010, when we established our new constitutional framework in our constitution and our different penal codes and organic laws that flowed out of it, every now and again we stumble on things that we say that needs to be addressed. Now, if it would take this prime minister to say, I will not file a complaint because I think it is redundant, because there is enough evidence out there. It was posted on Facebook. Even if it was taken down, there are people who have provided snapshots of the discussions, and one cannot say, oh, it's an old posting because comments that were made to it were based on recent incidents. The decision of government to pave a temporary parking lot in Kimsha was one that was done recently. So it is not something going back to last year. It is something that was on Facebook recently. And I'm saying we believe, I personally believe, something should be done about it rather than the prime minister, because then it would be like, oh, okay, he reacted then, but he didn't react this time. I'm a public figure, and people are going to say things, true or false, and I don't intend to be running to the media, or rather to the prosecutor every time somebody say, oh, William Allen's a dummy, or William Allen's a thief, or William Allen. But when someone using false and erroneous information, calling on the general public to start assassinating and making reference to St. Martin having more guns than Curaçao, and don't forget the uprising in 1979 and 1969, I'm saying we cannot and should not take these things like, these guys are talking nonsense. It has to be dealt with, as I said before, to avoid reactions and actions on the other side of the equation. Because the prime minister may not be loved or liked by everyone, but the prime minister has friends, he has family, and he has people who love him, he has people who like him, he has people who support him, and those people too could mobilize. I don't know. I have not encouraged anybody. As a matter of fact, some of those who called me to say, what is going on? I say, don't have no fear. I'm okay. I left my office last night at 12:30. I didn't have any security. I didn't call anybody to escort me home because I don't feel that my life is at risk. But you never know. You never know. And God forbid, we always say, it is only after it happens, then we would say, I told you so, or didn't you see the warning? Okay, so from that point, I contacted the Minister of Justice and said, listen, contact the prosecutor and tell these people to look into this because it is serious. Okay, it is serious. But I'm saying, while it is serious, I don't intend to start crawling under a rock and walking around with 10 security guards, because if people really want to take someone out, take a look at what happened to the most protected person in the world, which is the President of the United States. They have taken shots at them more than once, and fatal ones as well. You got 2 minutes.
I anticipate the answer you're going to give me, but
The time is up.
I'm going to still ask my third question. Last week I asked you about the selection of the CEO of TLM. You are discussing that just after this meeting. Has a selection been made out of the two candidates, and will you tell us
You will
who?
find that out after the meeting.
Thank you, Bibi. Andrew, the floor is yours.
Prime Minister, good morning. Just to stay on the Wilson threat, what is the difference between a threat being now and when Judith Rumo, the blogger, did it in the past. Is there, why did you take it this serious? Because, I mean, similar threats was done by her and by her postings, and I don't know if you did something at the time, but what's the difference? Why take it to heart now?
No, as I said, I never owned a Facebook account. I never go on Facebook. I don't have one. So whatever is said on Facebook, I do not know unless somebody draws my attention to it. Hadn't a businessman, and I guess by now everybody know who that was, send me a screenshot of the posting, I would not have known unless somebody had brought it to my attention. There were things that Judith Rumu posted, all kind of crazy stories. One of them, as a matter of fact, was one where she said that Francesco Corallo, I think it is, had summons all the political leaders, and he was angry with them, and he cursed them out. And what's interesting, and I'm saying this publicly for the first time, I was discussing this with someone who should be considered a prominent person in the society. And I was saying, can you imagine this craziness that Judith is writing, where she would get something like that? And I swear to God, the individual told me, Mr. Marlin, you want me to be honest with you? I said, tell me. He said, you know where Judith got that information from? I said, no. He said, from me. He said, from you? He said, yes. I said, well, why would you do something like that? But you know it's not for you. He said, no, I just thought, give her the information and let her put it out there and see what the reaction is going to be. I then turned to the person and said, you got to be sick. Okay? Now, this is supposed to be someone who is a prominent enough citizen in the community for you not to expect something like that from them. But that is where, for instance, somebody like Judith Rumu had gotten information, and this is according to the person. They didn't tell me, oh, you know who gave it to Judith? It's Peter, Paul, or Harry. The person said, I gave her that information. And I said, but where do you get it from? He said, well, I just see what the reaction would be, could be nice. Okay? But I'm saying, if there was a threat that Judith Rumu says she's going to kill William Marlin, if that was ever made before, I am not aware of it. I don't know about it. Today, I am aware of a threat that was made. Today, I am the Prime Minister of St. Martin, and a threat was made against the Prime Minister of St. Martin, and that's the point as well that I'm making. While I'm not saying that if somebody go on Facebook and threaten Gromyko or threaten Peter or threaten Paul, that, the Prime Minister is more important than them, but I think it is important that we protect the Prime Minister of a country. And as I said, if it is something that I have done, if I had an argument with Peter Paul down by Jimmy or by Harry or down in Dutch Quarter, Middle Region on Point Blanche, and it was a private threat or a private argument or discussion, it's a different thing. But if one uses a false pretense in terms of facts that are absolutely not so, to tap into those, to say, based on these, we should start killing and we should murder the Prime Minister and his family and his friends, then I think it is not a matter anymore of William Marlin, it's a matter of national security if people are going to start undermining the integrity of governance, where we are going to advocate taking out our leaders, and as I said, worse yet, based on false pretense and information.
Now, the procedure is, of course, in order for an investigation to start, it has to start at the police station. Now, you said you don't think that that should be the case. So my question would be then,
I didn't say I don't think that would be the case.
No, well, now with you.
No, I'm saying I do not, and I said if my standoff would have a reaction in Parliament to review our legal system, to review our penal code or whatever code it is that would need reviewing, to say no under these circumstances, because what the law says, if information is known that someone molested a minor, you don't wait on the minor to come forward and say, I was molested. If someone says, we found a body in the trench next to GBE, we don't wait on somebody to come forward and say, well, the dead body is my brother or my father. You see a body and it triggers an investigation.